I watched my stepsister's manicured fingers hover over the confirm button on my laptop screen, and I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from smiling. Are you absolutely sure about this, Vanessa? I asked, making my voice small and uncertain, the way she expected. That's 450,000 miles. It took me 3 years to accumulate. Oh my God, Claire, don't be so dramatic. Vanessa rolled her eyes, her perfectly highlighted hair catching the afternoon light streaming through my apartment window. It's just a business class ticket to Paris. You're never going to use these miles anyway. You don't even travel. She wasn't wrong about my old life. In my previous life, I'd hoarded those miles like a dragon guarding treasure, dreaming of someday taking a trip I'd never actually book. Too scared, too beaten down, too convinced I didn't deserve nice things. But that was before I died. Before I woke up in this same body, 7 years in the past, with every painful memory of my first life burned into my brain like a brand. I guess you're right, I said softly, watching her click confirm without a moment's hesitation. I'm sure the fraud investigation will clear everything up quickly. What? Her finger froze. Nothing. Enjoy Paris. The confusion on her face was delicious, but I kept my expression neutral. She had no idea that in my previous life, this exact scenario had played out differently. Back then, I'd said no. She'd thrown a tantrum. My stepmother had called crying about how Vanessa needed this trip for her influencer career, how I was being selfish, how family was supposed to support family. I'd caved within an hour. The frequent flyer account had been flagged anyway, not because of Vanessa's unauthorized use, but because I'd tried to report it after the fact. The airline had sided with her, suggesting I'd given permission and was now experiencing buyer's remorse. The miles were gone. Vanessa got her Paris trip. I got a lecture from my father about being a vindictive little liar. But that was then. This time, I'd done my homework. I'd spent 6 months carefully documenting every transaction on this account. I'd called the airline twice to confirm my security settings and verbal password requirements. I'd even reported my laptop as shared with a family member to establish a paper trail. And 3 days ago, I'd filed a formal notice with the airline that my step-family had been pressuring me for miles and that I'd refused all requests. Vanessa had just walked directly into a trap she couldn't even see. The confirmation came through, she squealed, bouncing on my bed like she was still 16 instead of 25. Oh my God, Claire, you're literally the best. I'm going to tag you in so many posts. My followers are going to die when they see the Ritz. I'm sure they will. I closed my laptop gently. When's the flight? 2 weeks. Marcus is meeting me there. You remember Marcus, right? My boyfriend? He said boyfriend with the same inflection most people reserved for fiancé or Nobel Prize winner. He's photographing a wedding in Nice, so we're making a whole thing of it. Marcus, right, the photographer who was actually a trust fund kid playing artist with his family's money. In my previous life, he dumped Vanessa 2 months after this trip when he met a French model. Vanessa had blamed me somehow, suggested that if I'd given her miles for a longer trip, she could have secured him properly. Sounds wonderful, I said. She was already texting, her thumbs flying across her phone screen. Mom's going to be so proud. She always says I have the best eye for luxury experiences. Of course she did. My stepmother, Patricia, had spent the last 7 years of my life, both lives, grooming Vanessa to be the perfect influencer princess while treating me like an unwanted houseplant. Someone to water occasionally, keep alive, but never really see. I should get going, Vanessa said, standing up and smoothing her designer dress. Lunch with Mom. We're planning my content calendar for the trip. She paused at the door, and for a second, something almost like guilt flickered across her face. You know, you should come to dinner Sunday. Dad keeps asking about you. No, he didn't. My father hadn't kept asking about me since he married Patricia when I was 12. But Vanessa believed her own lies. Or at least she needed me to believe them. Maybe, I said. After she left, I sat in the silence of my studio apartment and let myself exhale. The first domino had fallen. In approximately 72 hours, the airline's fraud detection algorithm would flag the transaction. They'd see that the miles had been redeemed from an IP address different from my usual pattern, for a destination I'd never searched without the verbal security password I'd set up. They'd freeze the account and launch an investigation. And I had every email, every text message, every voicemail from Vanessa and Patricia demanding those miles saved in a cloud folder titled Evidence. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why this moment felt like oxygen after drowning, you need to understand how I got here. You need to understand how I died. It started the way all good tragedies start, with a parent choosing a new spouse over their child. My mother died when I was 11, ovarian cancer, fast and brutal. My father, Gregory Chen, grieved for approximately 6 months before meeting Patricia Whitmore at a charity gala. She was a widow with a daughter exactly my age. Dad called it fate. I called it the end of my childhood. Patricia moved in within a year. She was beautiful in that sharp, calculated way. Blonde highlights always fresh, clothes always pressed, smile always perfectly calibrated to her audience. To my father, she was warm and supportive. To her friends, she was witty and charming. To me, when no one else was watching, she was ice. "Your room is terribly dark," she said a week after moving in. "Vanessa needs better light for her YouTube videos. You don't mind switching, do you?" I'd minded. My room had been my mother's reading room before she got sick. It had built-in bookshelves and a window seat where Mom and I used to watch thunderstorms. But I was 12 and afraid of being difficult, so I moved to the smaller room at the end of the hall. That was the first surrender. There would be hundreds more. Vanessa got the lead in the school play. I did the lighting. Vanessa needed a new laptop for her content creation. I could share the family desktop. Vanessa was allergic to the cat I'd gotten after Mom died. Fluffy went to live with my aunt. Every loss was framed as reasonable. Every sacrifice was just easier this way. And my father, who'd once called me his little warrior, slowly stopped seeing me at all. The money was the worst part. My mother had been a lawyer, and she'd left everything to me in a trust. Not a fortune, but enough. $200,000 to be released when I turned 25, and a college fund that would cover 4 years at any state school plus living expenses. My father was the trustee. I didn't find out until my previous life at age 24 that he'd been borrowing from it for years. Borrowing. That's what he called it when I finally worked up the courage to ask about my college fund. I was a sophomore at State, working 2 jobs to afford rent and books, wondering why I had to struggle when Mom had specifically saved for this. "I borrowed against it for Vanessa's private school," he'd said, not even looking up from his phone. "And her college deposits. Don't worry, I'm paying it back." He wasn't. By the time I was 24 in my first life, the trust was empty. My father had used every dollar to fund Vanessa's lifestyle, her influencer equipment, her brand-building trips, her networking wardrobe. Patricia had convinced him it was an investment in Vanessa's future, while I was more academically minded and would find my own way. I found my way, all right. I found my way to working 60-hour weeks at a consulting firm I hated, living in an apartment with 3 roommates, eating rice and beans to make rent, while my stepsister posted pictures from Santorini and Bali. And when I'd confronted him, really confronted him with bank statements and trust documents I'd gotten from the lawyer who'd helped set up Mom's will, he'd looked me in the eye and said, "Your mother would have wanted me to be happy. Patricia makes me happy. Sometimes family means making sacrifices." I died 3 months later. Not dramatically. Not in some way that would make people sorry. I'd just been crossing the street, thinking about how I'd have to work through Christmas to make my Q4 numbers. And a delivery truck ran a red light. I woke up at 19 in my dorm room with my roommate shaking me awake for our 8 a.m. biology lecture. For a full minute, I couldn't breathe. The memories of my death, of the years of grinding poverty and loneliness, of my father's betrayal, all of it was there, crystal clear. I'd stumbled to the bathroom and thrown up, then sat on the tile floor, shaking. It took me a week to accept that this was real. I was 19 again. I had a second chance, and I was going to burn their whole world down. The first thing I did was check my trust fund. I scheduled a meeting with Mom's lawyer, Harold Brennan, claiming I needed to review the documents for a finance class. He'd seemed surprised but pleased that I was taking an interest. "Your mother was very thorough," he'd said, spreading the papers across his desk. "The trust is performing well. At the current rate, you'll have approximately $240,000 when it releases at 25. Plus, your college fund is fully funded. My father is the trustee, I said carefully. What kind of oversight is there? Harold had frowned. The trust has strict terms. Your father can't access the principal, and the college fund can only be used for verified educational expenses. Quarterly reports go to both you and me. He'd pulled out a file. In fact, here are the last 3 years. Would you like to review them? I did. And there it was, the first withdrawal. $15,000 for educational consulting services that had actually paid for Vanessa's SAT prep and private college counselor. This, I pointed, can this be reversed? Harold had adjusted his glasses. Do you have reason to believe this wasn't for your benefit? I never used any educational consulting service. I'd remember $15,000 worth of help. His expression had shifted from pleasant to professional. I see. Let me look into this. In the meantime, I'm going to recommend we adjust the trust terms. With your permission, I can file to require dual signatures for any withdrawal over $1,000 and mandatory documentation for all educational expenses. I could have kissed him. Within a month, the new terms were in place. My father had called angry. What's this about changing your mother's trust? Harold says I need your signature now? Just being responsible, Dad. You always say I should take my finances seriously. I kept my voice light, innocent. Is there a problem? There was a long pause. No problem. Just seems like you don't trust me. Of course I trust you. I lied. It's just what Harold recommended. He'd hung up frustrated and I'd smiled. The first wall had gone up around my money. There would be more. Over the next year, I played the part of dutiful daughter and stepsister while slowly, methodically building my fortress. I documented everything. Every time Patricia borrowed my clothes and returned them damaged. Every time Vanessa used my laptop without asking. Every family dinner where my accomplishments were ignored and Vanessa's mediocre influencer metrics were celebrated like she'd won a Pulitzer. I kept spreadsheets. I recorded conversations. One-party consent state. I'd checked. I built a case like I was going to trial because in a way, I was. And I lived my life differently. In my first life, I'd been meek, afraid, desperate for my father's approval. This time, I was strategic. I got a job at a tech startup instead of consulting. I invested the money I earned instead of spending it trying to buy love from people who'd already sold theirs. I made real friends instead of clinging to toxic family. By the time I was 22, I'd been promoted to senior product manager. By 23, the startup had been acquired and my stock options were worth $800,000. My father didn't know. Patricia didn't know. Vanessa certainly didn't know. As far as they knew, I was still struggling Claire, boring Claire. Claire who worked some computer job and lived in a cute little studio. Let them think it. Meanwhile, I bought a beautiful loft in an up-and-coming neighborhood under an LLC. I invested in real estate and index funds. I hired my own lawyer, my own accountant, my own financial advisor. I built a life that had nothing to do with them. And I waited. I waited for the moments I remembered, the moments when they'd betrayed me in my first life, the moments when I could turn their own weapons against them. The frequent flyer miles were just the beginning. The call came on a Tuesday. Miss Chen, this is David Rodriguez from American Airlines Fraud Investigation Department. We need to speak with you about recent activity on your A Advantage account. I put on my best confused voice. Fraud? What happened? Is my account okay? We've flagged a transaction for 450,000 miles, redeemed for a business class ticket to Paris. The redemption came from an IP address in Connecticut, but your account is registered in New York, and our records show you've never searched for flights to Paris. Additionally, the booking was made without the verbal security password you established. Oh my God. I let my voice rise with panic. I didn't authorize that. I would never... Wait. I paused, as if something was dawning on me. My stepsister was at my apartment last week. She asked to use my laptop to check her email. Do you think, oh no, Do you know of Vanessa Whitmore? She's my stepsister, but I specifically told her she couldn't use my miles. I have the text messages. She's been pressuring me for weeks. I was almost crying now, not entirely fake. The emotions from my first life, the memory of being bulldozed and dismissed, were easy to tap into. I even called your customer service line to report the pressure and protect my account. Yes, we have that call logged from last week. Miss Chen, I need to ask, did you at any point give Miss Whitmore permission to access your account? Absolutely not. She must have watched me log in or something. I can send you our entire text conversation. She's been harassing me about this trip. There was typing on the other end. We'll need you to file a formal complaint. I'm going to email you the paperwork. The ticket has been canceled, and we've frozen your account pending investigation. We're also going to refer this to local law enforcement, as unauthorized access to airline accounts is a federal offense. My heart soared. Federal offense? Yes, ma'am. We take fraud very seriously. Someone will be contacting you within 48 hours. In the meantime, please don't discuss this with Miss Whitmore or anyone in your family. This is an active investigation. I hung up and allowed myself a smile. Then I called Harold. I need to file for full control of my trust, effective immediately. And I need you to audit every single transaction my father has made as trustee. I think we're going to find some interesting discrepancies. Claire, what's happened? My step-family just made a very big mistake, I said. And I'm done protecting my father from the consequences. The next 2 weeks were chaos, and I orchestrated every minute of it. Vanessa called first, hysterical. Claire, what the fuck? My ticket was canceled. The airline says there's a fraud investigation. What did you do? What did I do? I let my voice break. Vanessa, you stole my miles. You used my laptop without permission and accessed my account. That's a federal crime. You said I could use them. I absolutely did not. I have our text messages. You asked, I said no, and then you came over and helped yourself. The airline is investigating. There's nothing I can do. You're such a fucking liar, she was screaming now. Mom always said you were jealous of me, and she was right. You're doing this because you can't stand that I have a better life than you. I hung up. Patricia called 10 minutes later, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Claire, honey, there seems to be some confusion. Vanessa says the airline canceled her ticket. I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, Patricia. Vanessa committed fraud. She accessed my account without permission and stole 450,000 miles. The airline has involved law enforcement. The sweetness evaporated. You vindictive little bitch. After everything we've done for you, everything you've done for me. I laughed, and it felt like breaking chains. You took my bedroom. You got rid of my cat. You've treated me like an inconvenience for 7 years. And now Vanessa committed an actual crime, and you think I should just let it go? No, I'm done. Your father will hear about this. Good. Tell him to call me. I have a few things to discuss with him, too. She hung up. I poured myself a glass of wine and waited. Dad called at 8 p.m. Claire, Patricia says you're pressing charges against Vanessa over some airline miles. This is ridiculous. She's your sister, stepsister, and I'm not pressing charges. The airline is. Vanessa committed fraud, and it's out of my hands now. But since we're talking, there's something else I need to discuss with you. Claire, I don't have time for this. Harold Brennan completed the audit of Mom's trust. Silence. You stole $127,000 from me, Dad. Over 6 years. You forged my signature on withdrawal authorizations. You used my college fund to pay for Vanessa's private school, her college applications, her business expenses. Harold has documentation of everything. I didn't steal. I borrowed ABC. You stole. And Harold is filing a lawsuit for breach of fiduciary duty. You're also going to be reported to the Bar Association, since embezzling from your daughter's trust while acting as her lawyer-appointed trustee is probably something they'll want to know about. Claire, please, let me explain. Explain what? How you chose your new wife and her daughter over your own child? How you let Patricia erase every trace of mom from our home? How you watched them treat me like garbage for years and said nothing? My voice cracked, real tears now. You were supposed to protect me. You were supposed to love me. Mom trusted you with everything, and your mother would have wanted me to be happy. There it was, the same line from my first life. The justification for every betrayal. Mom wanted me to be taken care of, I said quietly. She left that money for me, not for Vanessa's Instagram career. And you know what? I'm going to fight for it. I'm going to take you to court and I'm going to win, and everyone is going to know exactly what kind of father you are. I hung up before he could respond. Then I cried, not from sadness, but from relief. I'd said the things I never got to say in my first life. I'd stood up for myself, I'd chosen myself, and I wasn't done. The lawsuit moved faster than I expected. Harold was a shark when he wanted to be, and the evidence was overwhelming. My father had forged my signature on documents, used trust money for non-educational expenses, and failed to provide adequate reporting. The court was not amused. But the real bombshell came from the forensic accountant Harold hired. Claire, you need to see this. He spread out a new set of documents during our meeting. Your father didn't just take money from the trust. He's been embezzling from his own firm. I stared at the numbers. What? The pattern is identical. He's been taking money from client settlements, covering it with creative accounting, and funneling it to Patricia and Vanessa. We're talking about $400,000 over 4 years. Oh my God. If we report this, he'll be disbarred and potentially face criminal charges. But Claire, this is beyond our civil suit. This is a criminal matter. I thought about my father, the man who used to take me to piano lessons and call me his little warrior, the man who'd read me bedtime stories and promised that he'd always protect me. That man had died with my mother. The person who replaced him had chosen a woman who treated me like an inconvenience and funded her daughter's luxury lifestyle with my dead mother's money. Report it, I said. Report everything. The scandal broke 3 weeks later. Gregory Chen, respected attorney, had been arrested for embezzlement and fraud. The Bar Association had opened an investigation. His firm had suspended him pending review. The local legal newspaper ran the story with the headline, "Prominent lawyer accused of stealing from clients and daughter's trust." My phone exploded with messages. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly concerned. Dad's colleagues shocked and apologetic. Even some of Patricia's friends, distancing themselves from the chaos. I ignored all of them except one. My Aunt Sarah, my mother's sister, called me crying. Claire, honey, I'm so sorry. I knew Patricia was awful, but I never imagined your father would do this. Your mother would be devastated. She would, I agreed, but she'd also want me to fight for what's mine. What do you need? How can I help? Actually, I could use a character witness for court, and maybe you could tell me more about Mom's life insurance policy? There was a pause. What life insurance policy? The one she took out 6 months before she died. The one that named me as the sole beneficiary, with you as the trustee if anything happened to Dad. I heard papers rustling. Claire, I never received any notification about a life insurance policy. I know, because Dad never told you. He's been collecting the benefits for 12 years, claiming he was managing them for me. Another piece I'd remembered from my first life, discovered only in the last month before I died. Another theft. Another betrayal. That son of a bitch, Sarah whispered. Yeah, I said. So, are you free next Tuesday for a meeting with my lawyer? The dominoes kept falling, each one more satisfying than the last. The fraud investigation into Vanessa's airline ticket led to a deeper look at her finances. Turns out most of her influencer income was actually cash from Dad's embezzlement, poorly hidden in a PayPal account. The IRS got involved. Vanessa was facing tax evasion charges on top of the fraud. Patricia tried to divorce Dad to protect her assets, but Harold had anticipated that. He'd filed liens against everything they owned jointly, freezing them out while the investigation proceeded. Dad's firm fired him officially, and several clients filed civil suits for the money he'd stolen. His legal defense was costing a fortune he didn't have anymore since all his accounts were frozen. They'd gone from the picture-perfect blended family to a cautionary tale in under 2 months. And me? I showed up to work every day. I smiled at my colleagues. I went to yoga. I had dinner with friends. I lived my life while their world burned. Because here's the thing about revenge, it's not satisfying if you're desperate and angry. It's only satisfying when you've already won. The court date for the trust case arrived on a cold morning in November. I wore a simple navy suit, my mother's pearl earrings, and no makeup except lipstick. I wanted to look like her, dignified, strong, unshakable. My father showed up in a wrinkled suit with a bargain bin lawyer. Patricia sat behind him, her face tight with rage and badly covered bruises from stress breakouts. Vanessa wasn't there. She was under house arrest pending her fraud trial. Harold presented our case with ruthless efficiency. He had the forged signatures, the unauthorized withdrawals, the paper trail of money flowing from my trust to Vanessa's accounts. He had my testimony about the years of manipulation and financial abuse. He had Aunt Sarah's testimony about the hidden life insurance policy. Dad's lawyer tried to argue that the withdrawals were loans, that I'd benefited from them somehow, that this was all a family misunderstanding. The judge wasn't buying it. Mr. Chen, you were appointed trustee of your daughter's inheritance with the explicit instruction to protect and preserve her assets until she reached adulthood. Instead, you systematically looted those assets to fund your stepdaughter's lifestyle. You forged your daughter's signature on legal documents. You hid a life insurance policy that was rightfully hers. And based on the evidence presented, you did all of this while simultaneously embezzling from your own clients. My father's face was gray. I'm ruling in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. You are ordered to repay the full amount of $127,000 plus interest and penalties, totaling $156,000. Additionally, the life insurance benefits you collected, $250,000, will be transferred to Miss Chen immediately. You are removed as trustee, with full control reverting to Miss Chen. And frankly, Mr. Chen, you're lucky this is a civil case because if I had the authority, I'd hold you in contempt of your daughter's very existence. The gavel came down. I walked out of that courtroom $406,000 richer and completely free. The epilogue of their destruction was almost too perfect. Dad pleaded guilty to the embezzlement charges to avoid trial. He got 3 years in prison and total disbarment. His reputation, the thing he'd valued above his own daughter, was ashes. Vanessa took a plea deal on the fraud charges, 2 years probation, restitution to the airline, and a permanent criminal record. Her influencer career evaporated overnight. Brands don't want to sponsor federal criminals. Her followers, vultures that they were, turned on her gleefully. The comments on her last Instagram post before she deleted her account were brutal. Patricia, with no more money flowing in and a criminal husband, had to sell their house. She ended up in a one-bedroom apartment, working retail for the first time in her adult life. I heard through the grapevine that she'd tried to reach out to her old society friends, but doors that had been open when she was Gregory Chen's wife were firmly closed now. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of irony. As for me, I threw a party for my 25th birthday. Not a big one, just my closest friends, Aunt Sarah and Harold, who'd become something of a mentor. We celebrated in my loft, which I'd finally allowed people to see. "Claire, this place is incredible," my friend Jessica gasped, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows, the original exposed brick, the art I'd been collecting. "How did you afford tech startup acquisition?" I said, grinning. "Turns out I'm good at building products people want." "Why didn't you ever say anything?" "Because I was building something that was just mine. Something no one could take from me or diminish or use as a weapon." Aunt Sarah hugged me tight. "Your mother would be so proud. Not of the money. She'd be proud that you stood up for yourself, that you didn't let them break you." "They did break me," I said quietly. "In another life, they broke me completely, but this time I broke them first." She pulled back, confused. "Another life?" I smiled. "Long story. Maybe I'll write a book about it someday." The trust money, combined with the life insurance and my own earnings, meant I was financially set for life if I was smart. And I was nothing if not smart now. I'd learned the hard way, twice that money was safety. Money was freedom. Money was the ability to walk away from people who hurt you. I invested most of it, kept working because I loved my job, started a scholarship fund in my mother's name for young women who'd lost parents, used some of it to travel, real travel, not Instagram performative nonsense. I went to Tokyo and hiked in Patagonia and spent a month in a villa in Tuscany, writing and thinking and healing. And sometimes late at night, I'd think about my previous life, about dying in the street, alone and broke and unloved, about the years I'd spent trying to earn affection from people who saw me as an ATM. I'd think about the moment I woke up at 19 with a second chance, and I'd whisper a thank you to whatever cosmic force had given it to me. Not everyone gets to rewrite their story. Not everyone gets to turn their trauma into triumph. But I had, and I'd done it methodically, carefully, perfectly. The frequent flyer miles had been the first real trap, but not the last. Every time I'd remembered a betrayal from my first life, I'd set the stage for it to happen again. Only this time, I was ready. This time, I documented it. This time, I had the resources and the knowledge to fight back. This time, I won. 5 years later, I got a letter. It was from my father, forwarded through Harold since I'd blocked all direct contact. The envelope was thin, the handwriting shaky. I almost threw it away, but curiosity won. Dear Claire, I know I have no right to contact you. I know I destroyed any claim to your love or respect, but I'm writing this from prison with a lot of time to think. And I need you to know you were right. I chose comfort over conscience. I chose a woman who flattered my ego over the daughter who needed me. I told myself I was providing for a new family, that I was being generous, that you were strong enough to handle anything. The truth is, I was weak, I was selfish, and I failed you in every way a father can fail. Your mother would be ashamed of me. I'm ashamed of me. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that seeing you in that courtroom, strong and certain and completely done with me, it was the proudest and most painful moment of my life. You survived me. You thrived despite me. And while I'll never be able to make it right, I'm grateful that you found the strength I couldn't give you. I hope you're happy. I hope you have everything Mom wanted for you. I'm sorry. Dad, I read it 3 times. Then I wrote back, Gregory, thank you for the apology. I accept it. Not because you deserve forgiveness, but because I deserve peace. You're right. I am strong. I am thriving. I have everything Mom wanted for me and more. But not because of anything you did. In fact, I had to actively fight against everything you did to get here. I hope prison gives you the time you need to become a better person. I hope you find redemption, but I won't be part of that journey. This is goodbye. I'm not your daughter anymore. I'm your cautionary tale. Claire, I sent it and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just the quiet satisfaction of closing a door that should have been locked years ago. That night, I had dinner with my boyfriend, Michael. We'd met at an industry conference 2 years prior. He was a software architect with kind eyes and a gentle sense of humor. He knew my whole story, every ugly detail, and he'd never once suggested I was too damaged or too vengeful or too anything. You okay? He asked, noticing my distraction. Yeah, I said, reaching across the table for his hand. Actually, I'm better than okay. I'm free. The letter? Close that chapter for good. He smiled. Good, because I've been thinking about opening a new one. He pulled out a small box. My heart stopped. Claire Chen, you're the strongest, smartest, most terrifyingly competent person I've ever met. You scare me a little, in the best way. Will you marry me? I laughed through tears. Yes, absolutely yes. We got married in a small ceremony 6 months later. Aunt Sarah walked me down the aisle. Harold gave a toast about never underestimating a woman with a good lawyer. My friends from work, from yoga, from the scholarship foundation I'd built, they filled the seats where my father and his family should have been, and I felt nothing but joy. Because this was my life. Built by me, for me, with people who actually loved me. No ghosts, no regrets, no looking back. Sometimes I wonder what my first life would have been like if I'd fought back sooner, if I'd set boundaries, if I'd valued myself enough to walk away from people who didn't value me. But I know the answer. I wouldn't have. That version of me was too broken, too desperate, too convinced that love had to be earned through suffering. It took dying to learn that lesson. It took being reborn to apply it. Now at 30, I run a successful product consultancy. I mentor young women in tech. I travel extensively and unapologetically. I have a husband who thinks I hung the moon and friends who actually show up when life gets hard. I have everything I wanted and nothing I don't need. And sometimes, when I'm in an airport lounge sipping champagne before a international flight booked with my hard-earned miles, I think about Vanessa, about her canceled ticket to Paris, about the look on her face when she realized she wasn't going to get away with it this time, about the moment she understood that I wasn't her doormat anymore. That moment, that beautiful moment of reversal, was worth everything. The frequent flyer miles were never about the miles. They were about showing her, showing all of them, that actions have consequences, that stealing from me had a price, that I was done being the victim in someone else's story. I was the hero of my own now. And in this version, in this life, I lived happily ever after. Not because everything was perfect, but because I'd learned the most important lesson. The only person who could save me was me. The rebirth gave me the knowledge. But I did the work, I set the traps, I fought the battles, I won the war, and every single day I wake up in a life I built from scratch, surrounded by people I chose, living exactly the way I want. No apologies, no regrets, no frequent flyer miles for people who never wanted me to fly in the first place. Just freedom, just peace, just victory. And that, in the end, is the best revenge of all.